started. And first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for coming to the 2025 Marine Bird Cooperative and Roseate Turn Recovery Group meeting. You may notice that it's not 2025, and that has a lot to do with just delays that we had due to the federal government shutdown. And so we decided that it would be better to have it in early 2026 than to miss it. So I'm glad that you're all able to join today. And I know this comes in a season where there's a lot of meetings, so thanks for your time. So getting started here, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the logistics of this virtual meeting. As I mentioned before, please put your name and affiliation in the chat so we have an idea of who's on. And also, if that even includes if you're just tuning in for a brief moment, just so that we know everyone who is tuned in. Keep your cameras off and stay muted when you're not talking, just to save bandwidth and decrease background noise. Especially the muted part is important. But of course, talk during questions and answers, or if I, tell people to come on, please come on. We are going to, when people are asking questions, we ask that you put a question in the chat or raise your hands. We'll call on you or read the questions out loud. The meeting and transcripts will be recorded, just so everyone knows this is all being recorded. And the reason for that, like in prior meetings, is that we like to have this served on the Marine Bird Cooperative website for people to be able to go back to. I want to mention, and I'll mention it when we look at the agenda, that the Community Science and Marine Bird Health Working Group breakout is the only session this afternoon that has a different link. All of the other sessions have the same link as this general session. So for most of you, you're just going to stay here. But if you are, again, going to Community Science and the Marine Bird Health Working Group this afternoon at 12:45, there is another link that was circulated, and it's also available in your agenda. There aren't any agenda timing and changes to note this time, but we will be having a similar kind of intro session every morning, and if there's any changes, we'll let you know about them. So if you have any technical issues, here are a list of people that you can contact. The main lead of this at the Department of Interior, who is kindly helping us out, is Joe Panetti. And this is the name and email address and phone numbers, but you can call any of these folks if you have any issues. And I believe that maybe if possible, someone can add that to the chat, at least Joe, if not others, so people who are on here, if they're having trouble, can be able to figure out who to call if there's technical issues. And now a little bit about Teams. Teams is always changing. So this is many of you know how to use Teams, but there are some that don't. And so I just want to kind of walk through this a little bit. Can you guys see my cursor on the screen? Yeah, great. So this is really the upper right-hand corner of Teams has this like little control panel here. It should look like this for most of you. The chat, if you want to see, you can open and close the chat by hitting this little chat button, which looks like a little talk bubble. You can also see who's participating in this meeting by clicking on this, and you can also close it in the same way. The most important thing, I think, is this raise hand button. The raise hand button just shows how to raise your hand to ask a question. The camera on and off button looks like a little camera. It's in that same kind of row. Same thing with the mic to turn yourself on and off for muting. And then sharing, your share is this little up arrow. It says share underneath if you want to share your screen. That's primarily for presenters. And then to leave the meeting, if you've had enough, you can click on the little phone that says leave, and that will allow you to leave. So that's just a quick overview of how to use Teams. If you have any questions, just write them in the chat. So I'm going to go through the agenda today. Primarily what this session is the Marine Bird Cooperative meeting and working group breakouts. We're going to start with an introduction and Marine Bird Cooperative overview, which I give at the beginning of each of these meetings because we often have new people that haven't seen it. And for those of you who haven't, you can go get a coffee or something like that. Then we're going to talk a little bit about updates on organization and development, just some happenings and some requests moving forward. Then we're going to have a session at 9:35 that's special topics. In particular, we're going to have Ruth Betcher and Sarah Schweitzer talk about the North American Waterbird Conservation Plan revision effort. And then I'm going to give a brief overview of a recent Seabird bycatch reduction workshop, which took place a couple of weeks ago. Then we're going to have a break. And then we're going to move on to a World Seabird Union update. We're going to have some working group updates where the working groups will tell you what they've been working on and talk a little bit about what to expect this afternoon during the breakout sessions. Then we'll have lunch from 11:45 to 12:45. And at 12:45, please be back on time for that. These working group breakout sessions will happen. And again, marine spatial planning will be on this channel, on this Teams channel. And there's another link that was in your agenda and also sent out separately for the community science and marine bird health group. So if you're interested in that, that's the only one where you have to go to a different channel. Then we'll have another break and we'll have be continuing with the forage, fish, and seabird colonies in adjacent waters. That's one single session, they're combined. So come back here and there's no other concurrent session there. And then we'll have from 4 to 4:30, the working groups kind of reporting out on their breakout sessions and wrapping up the meeting. Then join us again tomorrow for we have really a great lineup of general presentations beginning at 8:30 tomorrow morning. And then on Thursday, March 5th, we have the Roseate Tern Recovery Group meeting and starting at 8:30. And then we will have some general presentations specifically on tern tracking happening at 1:30. So that should be of interest to everybody. So I am going to now move on to the Marine Bird Cooperative overview. For those of you who are not familiar with the Marine Bird Cooperative or not as familiar, this should give you a little bit of background about what we do in the Marine Bird Cooperative. So the Marine Bird Cooperative is an open and collaborative forum for people with expertise and interest in Northwest Atlantic marine birds. And what we really are trying to do here is develop science and conservation actions, identify what those are, and then work collaboratively to address those needs. And that is really the benefit of this group, is that it has a lot of diverse people working on marine birds throughout the Atlantic Marine Bird Cooperative area. And so things that occur in this group are facilitating coordination of science and management and conservation activities, prioritizing species and needs and associated threats. We also help resource managers address needs, and the group helps identify and fill information and data gaps. We are also looking to identify and develop science-driven conservation actions and provide resources and tools for some of those actions. And then, a lot of this is about talking to one another and sharing what we know about science and management activities across stakeholders that are working on marine birds. And so a lot of this is achieved, especially the action-oriented part, through working groups, which, again, there will be breakouts this afternoon. Our geography goes all the way from Atlantic Canada down to the Caribbean, but I should also mention that in the Caribbean, there is a Birds Caribbean Seabird Working Group, so we're not trying to supplant what they are doing. We're largely just trying to work on the birds that use both the Caribbean and the Atlantic U.S. coast. And then I also highlight the Gulf of Mexico because we're, like with the Caribbean, we are looking at species that use the Gulf of Mexico for part of their life cycle. And considering them. But this is, again, really focused on the Atlantic coast from Florida up to Atlantic Canada. And we also focus, even though this was historically not the case, we focus on coastal colony work as well as species at sea. So a big part of what the Marine Bird Cooperative does is share information, and we do that through annual meetings. We have annual meetings that we like to have We mostly have virtually these days, but we like to have an in-person meeting about once every 2 to 3 years. And that, virtual meetings are great. You get a lot of participation in virtual meetings, but you can't get the same behind the scenes kind of direct one-on-one interactions where a lot of conservation activities have really been determined, and people can really work together a lot more closely when you have those kind of side discussions at in-person meetings. So we aim to have them. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the potential plan for that in the future, but just know that we have an annual meeting, and that is an opportunity to really touch base as a group. We also have working group meetings, and working group meetings happen every annual meeting, but some of the working groups also meet independently, either every other month. Sometimes they've met every month. So that's really up to the working group lead and that group of folks that are working in the working group. We have a listserv, which is how we get information to all of you. And that serves the organization and helps inform the Marine Bird Cooperative partners and members about events and issues that are upcoming. We also have a website, which I can talk about a little bit more in a minute, but that serves a public and technical audience, and we are trying to share resources and news with that website. That website's been going on for at least 10 years now. We have partner project summary and accomplishments, which is an annual project level reporting. A lot of you have provided to that. I'll talk about that too in a minute, but thank you. These are widely, I think, a cross section of the different Marine Bird projects that are going on within the Marine Bird Cooperative area, and they really help people identify who is doing what with Marine birds in this area. So we now have around 320 people on the listserv, and this is a very informal group. So if you're on the listserv, you're considered a member of the Marine Bird Cooperative. That said, we have about probably 50 to 75 people that are regularly active, and you can see there's 66 people on the call today. So that's right in there. The peak meeting participation, though, especially with virtual meetings, is around 200. And we've been sort of combining with the Roseate Tern Recovery Group. This is our 4th year of doing that. And since that has happened, that's kind of brought even more people into this fray. And especially when during the presentations, we can get over 200 people sometimes. 100 organizations or more are represented by the members of the Marine Bird Cooperative, which is great. That includes agencies for both federal and state and also provincial in Canada, NGOs, joint ventures, universities, consultants, and industry. We have a coordinator, that's me. I've been a coordinator of the Marine Bird Cooperative for 10 years now. And we also have these working groups that are probably 3 to 5 are generally active at one time. Right now we have 4. We have a steering committee that right now is made up of 9 members. I'll talk about that in a little while. And we have an informal governance. Now, for a long time, we didn't have any governance. This has always been a very informal group, especially when it started. But I think it was about 2016, we had a meeting and we asked, well, is this the kind of group that you guys want as your group? And there was some suggestion that we didn't want a super formal group with like dues and people having to sign up, commit to things formally. But we did want, an additional governance structure, and that's when the steering committee was formed. So that's kind of how we operate. So some representative Marine Bird accomplishments. We've over the years done really a lot of things, but I'm going to talk about things in the more recent past, in the last year or two, in different areas. One of the things that we've always kind of worked on is marine spatial planning. This network has really continued to improve decision making by supporting partner efforts. One of the partners that will be hearing from tomorrow is the Regional Wildlife Science Collaborative, and so that's a group that there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination with. We've helped develop extensive guidance on offshore surveys and tracking, written letters in the past to provide guidance and and suggestions, and we've identified considerations for compensatory mitigation for offshore wind. So that, a lot of that work is done with the Marine Spatial Planning Working Group, which will be, again, meeting today. Another thing that we do is species management and threats assessment. I want to highlight a couple of things today. Collaborative effort to better understand and track changes to seabird diet across Marine Bird Cooperative focal area through the Project Poop colony surveys. Will also be a lot about that. There's a couple of presentations from Gemma Klukas and partners on that, which is really exciting, and again was something that was a collaboration between the forage fish and SCAW groups. And then there was recently this workshop on bycatch reduction, which was co-hosted by the Marine Bird Cooperative. So that is also something that I'll talk about in about an hour. We have the Marine Bird Health has been really something with the Marine Bird, the AMBC Community Science and Marine Bird Health Working Group. And one of the things that they've been working on recently is leading a bunch of initiatives. A few include finalizing a compilation of high path avian influenza resources and communication networks. And there's a new initiative forming around documenting and understanding a series of tern mortality events that seem to be occurring even beyond the Marine Bird Cooperative area. So you'll hear a little bit more about that during the breakout this afternoon. And then there's the website. So I'm not going to get into too much detail of the website. You can look it up. I have in past meetings, I've gone and done kind of a demonstration, but I figure you guys can all take the time to do a demonstration and use it as you wish. But I think it is worth mentioning here. So it's www.atlanticmarinebirds.org. And I think one of the big things that I want to point out today that's different from the last time we talked is that the Biodiversity Research Institute, beginning in 2025, assumed website hosting and technology fees. They actually made this website, have made sure this website is fast enough and stays with the times. We could not do that without some additional funding. The Fish and Wildlife Service has some challenges with funding in recent years, and the Biodiversity Research Institute thankfully stepped forward. So you can thank them for making sure that this website is continuing to function. But I also, within the website, I did want to make one call. So a couple of things that we have is just descriptions of the cooperative and the working groups. We have a list of partner organizations. We have appropriate contacts. We also have a web tab that has meeting announcements for the Marine Bird Cooperative and other groups of interest. And then we have a lot about resources, which include the links to all these meetings. They include all the partner project summaries, and then a bunch of literature that you guys have submitted, and links. So if you have anything that is Marine Bird related and you do not see it there in the resources and you would like to share it with the Marine Bird Cooperative, please contact me and I can get it up on the website. The other thing that we have is a news tab, and the news tab has been kind of dormant in recent years. In fact, I don't think there's a story that's happened in the last year. So we're looking for like 1 or 2 paragraphs on an accomplishment. It could be a publication, it could be some kind of major partner-driven effort. But 1 to 2 paragraphs with a photo, and you can really highlight your work, and a contact, of course, and highlight your work to this group of partners. We're not a huge group, but we do get some some website traffic. So this is an opportunity for you to share your news stories in a place that you might not normally be thinking about sharing them. So again, you can contact me to share your news stories, and they would be most welcome on our website. So I'm going to take a sip of water here, and then I'm going to move on into the organization and development portion, which will just give a little bit of an update on what we've been working on. And thank you for bearing with me talking at you for a long time. This is sort of how this portion of the meeting goes. And I've mentioned to other people that by the end of this, I'm kind of tired of my own voice. But I think that this is a way to convey what we've been working on. And I appreciate your patience during this time. There'll be more opportunities for interaction during the working group breakouts. So here's what we've been working on over the last year and some of the things to highlight around organization and development of the Marine Bird Cooperative. I want to start out by talking about the steering committee. And I talked a little bit about that, but it was established in 2019. And if you want to get into the weeds about the composition, structure, and selection process, you can find that on the resources tab of the website. But that wasn't finalized until 2022. But what that does is it really explains how the steering committee is organized, what the different roles are, and it talks about the responsibilities and the function of the Marine Bird Cooperative Steering Committee. And a big part of it is just planning and facilitating these annual meetings and helping with follow-up actions. Also developing and refining the organization and development, which includes things like how do we make a decision as a group? And so we've made a lot of progress on that in the last 5 years or so with help from the steering committee. The steering committee also supports working groups. Parts of the steering committee are actually the leads of the working groups. And then there's a lot about communications and information sharing. We have people helping out with websites sometimes, the listserv, the member project summaries, and then we also are a World Seabird Union partner organization. So when there are votes on that, the steering committee gets involved, and we'll be having a World Seabird Union update at about 10:30 today. So this is the makeup of the Marine Bird Cooperative Steering Committee. You have me as a coordinator, like I said, since 2016. And then there are 4 active working groups, and each of the acting working group leads is also a steering committee member. And that includes Stephanie Avery Gom from the Community Science and Marine Bird Health Group, Linda Welch leading the Forage Fish Group, Holly Goyer leading the Marine Spatial Planning Group, and Ruth Betcher in the Seabird Colonies and Adjacent Waters, or SCAW group. We also have between 2 and 4 at-large members, and they're have a 4-year term. And historically, up until 2025, that included Scott Johnston from the Fish and Wildlife Service, Pat Jodas from USGS, and Sarah Wong from the Canadian Wildlife Service. But we've had some changeover, and the first one is that Scott Johnston has retired from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and stepped off of the steering committee. But thankfully, we actually had 2 people come in to replace him, and that included Tabitha Cormier, who is at McGill University in Quebec, and Sarah Carpenter from Virginia Tech in Virginia, which is really great to have them as at-large members of the committee. And then one other new addition is Leon Taylor, who is stepping into the Community Science and Marine Bird Health Group to co-lead with Stephanie Avery Gom. So we welcome all the new members, and they've already been very helpful in helping to organize this meeting. We still have an opportunity, though, for people to be able to serve on the steering committee. And again, the roles and responsibilities are under the resources tab. It's called Steering Committee Responsibilities and Composition, Volume 1, pretty straightforward, and says what the steering committee members do. The time commit's pretty low. It's, compared to some other steering committees or boards, it's generally under 15 hours a year, probably less than that, honestly. And then you're expected to participate in the annual meeting. When that meeting is in person, it's a little bit more time consuming because we hope and expect that you'll come. But mostly we're virtual. So we have at-large positions that are open every 2 years. And it's probably worth mentioning that a couple of those folks on the list are in 2026. They will be that will be their 2-year term. And really, what generally happens is we don't have a huge it's not super competitive. So people that are on and want to continue can continue their terms as an at-large member. And so we've had, Pat Jodas, for example, has been with the Marine Bird Cooperative for longer than I have. He was a founding member, actually. And so he has, kindly continued to offer his time to this group. But I should mention that there are also opportunities for people to participate as an at-large member. And, again, because the 2-year terms are coming to an end in 2026, I think that it is an opportunity for new people to come in. We have a preference right now because we're kind of still and historically have been weighted to the Northeast and right now in Atlantic Canada, which is great. But we're looking for folks particularly from the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast. And then we also have an agency kind of bias at the moment. So, we're looking for NGOs and academics to step forward. But quite honestly, if you're interested, don't let that stop you. We're certainly interested in having anyone come in. So if you are interested, please send me an email and we can talk a little bit more about that. But there are a number of different great reasons to join, including just the network and partnership opportunities and getting experience in working on a professional committee. So the next discussion topic, which is one that we started on the last call, but we've made some progress, is the Marine Bird Cooperative Priority Species List revision. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then hopefully at the end of the session, if there's time, we'll take a couple of questions. But I'm going to finish up first. So, and then if you have any questions too, you can just put them in the chat as I go. So the Marine Bird Cooperative first developed a priority species list in 2013-14. It was released in July of 2014. And why did we do this? Well, the reason is that there is really thought to be by the Marine Bird Cooperative members a lack of adequate marine bird representation in other prioritization lists, including the Avian Conservation and Assessment Database, IUCN, and others. And there was no regional list. So we developed this list. This was at a time where I actually wasn't with the Marine Bird Cooperative. And so tracking down how this list was made was really challenging, much more than you would expect. It wasn't very well documented. We do know that they used primarily expert opinion, but because of that lack of institutional memory, we have this list, but it's not really used very much anymore. But what the list does is it is still available on the resources tab. It includes 18 high conservation concern species, 17 medium and 10 low, and that includes sea ducks, loons, and beach nesting colonial species. Historically, this list was used in state wildlife action plans and marine planning tools, such as the ocean portals. But again, it's been a long time, and so they're not really very much used anymore. So we know that list is outdated, but we're not in a better position as far as having other resources that have come in to meet that need. Marine birds continue to be insufficiently represented, and there was continued Marine Bird member support for the idea of revising this list. And that was highlighted in both the 2023 and 2024 meetings as a priority. And so what we did from that is form an ad hoc working group, the Species Prioritization Working Group. It's not on the website because it's kind of like a temporary working group, but it is an important one. And we have figured that this is still needed for management conservation for things like informing the data portals, which we right now they have not used the Marine Bird Cooperative list as a way to group priority species because that list is old, but they have also said when we have a new list, they will incorporate it. Also, like we're going to hear about the Waterbird plan revision, step down plans. This might be really helpful for that. And then bolstering Atlantic Flyway Council state wildlife action plans. That might be another kind of opportunity there. Now, we're a little off cycle for the state wildlife action plans. Most of them have already come out or are coming out. But it would be another source of information for offshore birds, particularly for states that don't have really adequate representation of marine birds in their state plans. So I think it's still worth doing this. So what we did was in March 2025, we created an informal working group, and there are 13 members of that group. You can see their names here. I'm not going to name all of them, but I am very grateful to everyone who has participated in this. And I am apologetic that I have kind of dropped the ball a little bit on moving this forward. But I do want to highlight a couple of some progress that we made. And we had 3 calls in the spring and the summer of 2025. I have a few starred names here: Jeff Gleason, Scott Hall, Pat Jodis, Brad Pickens, and C. McKeon. These were all folks that participated in extra calls as part of a prioritization process subteam that was really responsible for getting into the kind of sausage making of developing a ranking process. And what we have done so far as a group is define the purpose of the team. That was sort of like the first thing that we wanted to do of the working group, compiling information that would be needed to come up with a list, and decided on a draft prioritization process. And that's kind of where things kind of slowed down. So we came up with this purpose statement. It describes the list and scope and rationale. And one of those is just to help the Marine Bird Cooperative members and others with mutual interests in marine birds focus science management and conservation actions. So the next thing was a species list, and that it was a set of species to consider within the Marine Bird Cooperative area. And we worked on this for quite a while with all of the working group members. That was adapted. Thankfully, we didn't have to start from scratch. We had this wonderful regional wildlife science collaborative bird list for birds that occur in the offshore environment. And that was completed in November 2024. So the timing was really good. We started with that and then kind of looked into that and compiled information on occurrence, status, and regional population trends. Some of that is not very new. It's kind of hard to find for the region, but thankfully there is this Nisbet et al. Monograph from 2013, certainly better than nothing, that has some information on regional trends. And for others, we're going to, where there's more up-to-date info, we'll reach out to individuals that are collecting that information. But as far as like a compilation, that's really one of the only ones that I know about anyway, that the working group knows about for regional trends. And then there are range-wide population trends. Avian Conservation Assessment Database, while not perfect, is one source of information. And then there are a number of other sources that we've been looking at and compiling information from. We also made some decisions about taxonomy. There's some changes in there and some geographic decisions about which species to include for consideration. And then we developed this threats list, which are the different threats to consider in this prioritization process. And we used a couple of existing lists from Diaz et al., which was specifically focused on marine bird species, and the IUCN 2012 list to come up with an idea of different kinds of threats to consider. And then we came up with a number of threats and in 4 different categories of how the species were affected, either through direct mortality, habitat loss, productivity loss, or food loss. So we're trying to come up with a process that's a little bit more relevant to marine birds than the existing processes have been, but in a lot of ways it does follow some of the same kind of format. So this has led to this prioritization process outline, which we need to evaluate population size at global or relevant subpopulations, population, and sometimes with marine birds, in instances like the Avian Conservation and Assessment Database, this has been challenging because sometimes that sub-taxonomy is not considered. Even if it's a subspecies, the Avian Conservation Assessment Database can sometimes think about the range as the entire range of the population, when we know very well that there's not mixing of, say, European subpopulation or subspecies and the Western Hemisphere. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of improve that from what's existing. We also are interested in population trajectories, both at the global and regional levels. We're interested in distribution of the species. And then representation is the proportion of the population or subpopulation using the Marine Bird Cooperative area. And then redundancy is just the number of breeding locations. And this is something that we found in other evaluations of marine birds, but doesn't really find its way into other more widespread scoring methods. And we think this might be a way to help make this sort of scoring process a little bit more applicable to marine birds. And then, of course, threats. We have, we're going to evaluate threats on the number of specifically identified threats that are encountered, or the severity of these cumulative threats. and again, we're still working out some of the details, but the idea is that for each of these 6 different categories, there will be a score, and this is very similar to other scoring processes like ACAD. There will be a score, and that score will eventually be summed, and then groupings of those scores will be divided into high, medium, and low categories with an additional one that's data deficient. And for some of these species, particularly ones that are highly pelagic, we might have some data deficient species, which we want to highlight because just this is a thing that I think happens also, that when a species is data deficient, it just kind of gets forgotten about. That's probably not a good idea, considering that some of these species are probably also very rare. So we want to really highlight that as well in this new scoring criteria. So what happened? Well, summer, things were going well and through the summer, and then we had some Fish and Wildlife Service staff losses and some shifting priorities. We have a very busy sub-team. Nobody except for me is getting paid to work on Marine Bird Cooperative issues, for sure. And there was this long government shutdown in the fall. And so I had a number of things on my to-do list, and I kind of this has become my favorite meme, this child that is missing the ball. I know I've shown this in other Marine Bird Cooperative meetings, but this is my way of just showing that, I did not meet some of the hoped deadlines that I had, but we did make a lot of progress. So I'm definitely not going to completely drop the ball. I'm going to pick it back up again. And this is some of the next things that I hope to do in the next couple of months. And one of them is to take that list of different rankings and try them out with a few species that we have a lot of information for population size and trajectory. So that's good. That'll be a really cool thing to do, and figure out if that is a good, if that makes sense, if these are kind of sorting in ways that we think that they will. I would like to also reinitiate the working group, and I know maybe some of you are not even in your current jobs. I hope that you are, but I would say, please, if you were on that list and you're no longer interested in being in the working group, let me know. Otherwise, I will be calling on you in the upcoming months. But I'm going to start with a sub-team who I identified specifically in a prior slide. And what I'm going to do is just share, as this was on my list before, is share those example species, and then try and get some assistance and input on coming up with a threat scoring process. As with other ranking processes for species, I found that the threat scoring process is probably among the most subjective. So we really have to come up with a process that we feel comfortable with, and I really need input from others on the working group for that. So once we get all that in place, we will present to the working group for more input and revise the process as needed. And then after that, we can actually go through the whole thing, and we can produce a list. Now, there are some unresolved challenges here. Working group members, don't have a lot of time, so I'm well aware of that, and I don't have a lot of time. But again, we've all just, even if this takes a long time, we're going to keep at it, and I think that this is still identified as something that is important for our group. The threat scoring process is expert opinion driven, so we're going to, need to make sure that that we're all comfortable with what that process looks like, and at the end of the day, what those scores are. And again, this is why it's good to have a working group, so we don't have to do this by committee of 200 or 300 Marine Bird Cooperative members. But we also have some data challenges, particularly when understanding regional representation and population trajectory. So that's something, if everyone has really good sources for or ideas about. I know there's some species that have much better data than others, but this is going to be, one of the challenges of this ranking process is consistency across species. And so trying to be as consistent as possible is really a challenge when the amount of data that we have is not consistent. So anyway, we're still kind of like figuring out how to work that, but I think part of that will be, we're just going to do the best that we can do based on the existing information and try and get the best information possible. So our goal is to complete this process and share a draft list with all of the Marine Bird Cooperative prior to the next meeting. And then after that meeting, we'll finalize this list and call it good. So I think that probably will be sometime around September. And I'm glad that people shared the Nisbet et al. Monograph. It's really a fantastic resource for this area. I know it's now, 13 years old, but I still look at it, and it was really a lot of work to pull that together by Nisbet and his partners. So that is it for the prioritization process. I have just a couple more slides, and then I will take about 5 minutes, or maybe I even will have 10 for some questions. But what I would really like to do is go through and it's really great that people are putting ideas in the chat. We will definitely take those ideas and pull them out. The chat will be archived, so keep them coming. Thanks, Kate. Keep them coming if you have other ideas for prioritization processes. And then, like I said, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to open it up for people to provide information. And look, there's a little phantom heading here that is not supposed to be there. Okay, so we have project summaries and partner accomplishments. I'm just going to wrap up with a few achievements of the group. So the background for the partner project summaries is that this is an opportunity for people to really share information on the work that they're doing, Marine Bird Cooperative members. And it has been happening since 2012, and it's been semi-annual since then, and annual since 2021. So we're really doing a great job. You are doing a great job of being able to submit your information. One of the things that I really like about these, and we did consider stopping them, but I think there was a lot of interest in continuing. This is an opportunity for if you're like new to this area, maybe you're a grad student and you're trying to start on a new Marine Bird project. You don't know what all the work has been going on around here, and this is an opportunity not only to identify what kind of work is going on with marine birds, it's sort of a cross-section of all that work, and then in addition, it provides a contact. So it's very cool I think it can be really useful, even if it's not used by hundreds of people, even if it's used by 10 people. We decided that this was worth the time to put in and essentially provide an abstract of the great work that you guys are doing. So we generally get 20 to 40 project summaries, and they're organized by topic, and they're served on the resources tab of the website. And then sometimes we serve some as news stories in the news tab. And again, this is another shameless plug. Please provide us with anything that you think is a really big, it doesn't even have to be a huge news story, like the release of a paper or a guidance document, or maybe an island cleanup that was really effective at preventing debris, things like that. We really want to highlight those news stories. But again, that's a different idea and purpose from this project summary. And the project summaries really, again, are used by people, the Marine Bird Cooperative partners and members, identify that they use it for outreach purposes, even just sharing with their leadership what they've been working on and how other folks are working on similar projects. It helps to get people together as partners and work collaboratively and identify contacts for that. And then just a general awareness, like I mentioned, as to who is doing what. So 2025 partner project report is actually available now on the website. We got 34 submissions, so thank you very much if you submitted. It was like a really pretty decent number of submissions, some really excellent projects going on. I always am amazed because I don't always know all of the work that's going on, but I should mention, all the way from Canada down to the Gulf of Mexico, we have projects in here in a number of different topic areas, from at-sea surveys to fisheries bycatch to offshore wind science and management. All of these different types of projects are available in this report. And again, that's in the resources tab of the Marine Bird Cooperative website. You'll see the full list of all of the prior year's reports there. And I also wanted to highlight our new steering committee member, Tabitha Cormier, for compiling, taking the time to compile all these really fantastic help to pull that together. So I have two more slides, I think, and then we can take 10 minutes of questions and comments. We have been talking about the Marinebird Cooperative meeting in person. And again, we haven't met since 2023. That's now, pushing 3 years, October 2023. And we met with the Waterbirds Society in Fort Lauderdale, which was a fantastic meeting, actually. There's a lot of momentum, and it really shows, I think, the difference between in-person and virtual meetings. Virtual meetings are great. It's an opportunity to share, but when you have a group of this size, it's really hard to get input in a meaningful level and share and have those conversations on the sidelines that really lead to productive actions. So we really would like to have another in-person meeting. Again, we aim to have them every 2 to 3 years. And so there have been some challenges, though, and one of them is that there are real restrictions on federal employees being able to travel. Budgets are really low, but we still have been considering different options, and I'll show you what those are. One of them is the 8th International CDUC Conference, which is occurring in Cape Cod in November. And that's going to be a great conference for sure. It brings people from actually all over the world to talk about sea ducks, which are marine birds. And one of the problems with that is that I have polled our steering committee, and most of the members can't attend that. So that doesn't seem to be a great option. But we have another option here as a standalone meeting. The good thing about that is it's not considered a conference, and we probably would not have the same federal restrictions. But again, people going to a standalone conference for just the Marinebird Cooperative generally would get small numbers. So we're thinking about that as a possibility, but it doesn't seem like it would get a lot of people. But I might send out a poll a little bit later on about these options. We have the Waterbird Society meeting, which is taking place in Cape May, New Jersey, from November 2nd through 5th, 2026. I mentioned the federal travel issues, but one good thing about the Waterbirds meeting is that we've always been able to have great meetings with Waterbirds. They're always very supportive. I've already started discussions with the Waterbird Society, and I'll have more in the upcoming week or two to consider whether or not that's a real possibility. But for now, it's a question mark. And then virtual again. Well, I think that's good. We're having a virtual meeting now. It's March. We usually have our meetings in November. So the question will be, if we have a virtual meeting, do we need another one in 2026 or put it off till 2027 and be off schedule? Anyway, these are all things that we can figure out, but I think it's most important for you guys to know that the two kind of options right now that are seeming the highest are a standalone meeting or Waterbirds. And I will definitely be in touch with everyone about that through the listserv and maybe even come up with a poll for you guys. Oh, there's a skip entirely option, which I'm not as wild about, but it is another potential. So yeah, I say thoughts, raise your hand, chat now, or email Caleb as soon as possible. We're about to have time for that in one more slide. So last thing, this is just a plug. If you are interested in a working group, either a new working group or a revitalized working group, we have room for more working groups. Again, the issue there is just, having the time, someone really taking the lead on starting this. I am very happy to help people get things started, but I can't coordinate and also lead a working group at the same time. I've tried with Bycatch and it hasn't worked out very well. But because the Marinebird Cooperative is run through these working groups, it is certainly worth mentioning that there are room for more. I already mentioned the 4 that are currently active. One possible working group that could be really timely is the Bycatch working group. For many years, that was a working group that met regularly. It's been long dormant. One of the reasons that might be a good time to revive that is this Bycatch workshop and some ongoing field work that's been going on through which I'll talk about in a little while. But there's also this trilateral committee on wildlife bycatch working group that's been nationally doing some coordination efforts. So this would be an opportunity for us to be organized in the Marine Bird Cooperative area on this coast. And then, of course, bycatch continues to be a primary threat of seabirds worldwide. So again, I would need a co-coordinator on this, but this is just an example. Other ideas, actually, there's a number on the website, include an outreach and messaging group. We've talked about highlighting seabird issues. I mean, they're one of the fastest declining taxa, 70% since the 1950s. But you know, I think sometimes it's hard for people to relate to them as a taxa because you don't see them as often. They're off at sea, and so you know, people have talked about ways that we can kind of improve our outreach and messaging. So that's another idea. But anyway, please propose any ideas to me or another steering committee member for if you are interested in starting a working group. And I understand how busy people are. So this is again just to let you know that you are able to do this. We're very happy that we have the 4 working groups that we have. They've made a lot of progress, but again, there are still opportunities. So with that, I am going to stop sharing. And I know I talked at you for like an hour. So if you can remember any of the things we talked about, I am happy to take questions either in the chat or just raise your hand about anything. Particularly, I'm looking for input on the venue for the next Marine Bird Cooperative meeting, ideally in person. Or I'm also looking for any questions or input on this prioritization process. But I'll take questions on anything. So we have some time. Otherwise, we're gonna have I think a little unexpected break because I probably talked fast. But do people have any questions, comments? Thank you already for some of the comments that are coming in. Don't be shy. Some people had some ideas about prioritization. People want to talk about it. Thanks, Jeff.
Hi.
Anyone have any thoughts on that? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll pop on, get the ball rolling here. So I've posted a link to David Liskey's paper on synthesizing expert opinion, and he uses a analytical hierarchical process. And essentially in his paper, he looked at I think it was maybe 14 different seabird species or taxa, and asked experts to basically there's a slider and you have every single combination of species and pressures, and experts are asked to sort of move that slider. So you get a relative ranking and then use that to turn into a sensitivity weighting. And so it just occurs to me that if you're doing or you're using expert elicitation because you have uneven information, then that might be a good approach. And David was good enough to actually share the ethics documentation and the survey documentation and the code with us. And so we reproduced that entire expert elicitation for just northern gannets for our cumulative effects study, which I'll talk about tomorrow. And so everything's sort of packaged up and turned into electronic copies because they used paper copies. So you could look at his paper to sort of learn more, but it might be a lighter lift.
That sounds great. Yeah. And especially for things that are like for which there really isn't data, like threats. And you see that in other ranking processes is like threats are always subjectively assessed. There's not really a very good way to do it any other way. So I definitely am interested in looking at that. And I also I see that that Kate and others talked about this vulnerability assessment for offshore wind that has been done. And there's a reason that we started with the Regional Wildlife Science Collaborative Species List. We know there's definitely a link there. So there are definitely some resources there. And we should probably talk, Kate and Evan, a little bit more about timelines and how we might be able to help each other out with that a little bit. So thank you for that. I should also mention, I think with, it seems like we're making this particularly, I mean, we could make this really easy like we did last time where people just get in the room and hash it out. But there is sort of a little bit of an ulterior motive that I have too for getting into this level of detail. And that's because I'm currently on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is currently doing our birds of conservation concern list right now, and I'm on one of the teams that is helping to identify what species are on that list. It's challenging. It's kind of like messy work, but a lot of the list derives from the Avian Conservation Assessment Database, and they have admittedly said that seabirds are not well represented, and they understand that there are challenges with that. And because of that, it would be really nice to have a process that we could kind of go to them and say, seabirds are weird, and here are some ideas for how we might be able to improve that process for seabirds. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm thinking that it would be useful to get into this. And then we can also have a thing that we can replicate in the future. So that's sort of why I'm taking this approach, even though it's taking a longer amount of time, and it seems like the working group supports it. Any other comments or questions on prioritization or venue? Anyone have any thoughts on venue? We have 5 minutes until, actually, you know what? We could probably have, I think at 9:30, I think we could probably have Ruth and Sarah go, even though it's just very slightly early. And then if we have an extra, okay, it looks like Sarah has her hand up. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hey Caleb, I was just curious, are you gonna do a poll about those meeting choices? Because I think that would be helpful. I know you
Yeah.
polled the steering committee. Do you have one
Yeah, I
made
think
or do you need help
so.
making one?
Yeah, I think that is probably what will end up happening. And particularly the way I like to phrase it is, would you be able to come? Because it's sort of like, having an interest if you can't come is not very helpful. So I think that probably will be, and we have somebody saying they favor the Waterbird Society joint, and that's pretty common in our steering committee too for folks, is that I basically almost nobody said they could make it to the CDUC International Seabird Duck Conference, even though it's going to be a great meeting. But they also said that Waterbirds was a possibility. We have more than half, in fact, probably 3/4 of the steering committee that said maybe. Now, the big issue, though, for that is just will federal employees be able to go? And if the answer to that is no, then it would be challenging, unfortunately. And we have these really very strict travel rules right now around conferences. So that's kind of the issue. But yeah, Ricardo said, and this is really important, it's the 50th anniversary meeting of Waterbirds. It's going to be a great meeting, whether the Marine Bird Cooperative is there or not. And so I think there'll be a lot of people there, and it's in Cape May, which is fantastic. We haven't had a Marine Bird Cooperative meeting north of Maryland in 10 or more years. So that would be great too. So yeah, Allison said that two service employees can go right now, and that is kind of my understanding as well. But I'm still trying to figure out like the details of that and whether or not, like if we meet as a Marine Bird Cooperative, if there's any leeway. But honestly, my thought is that it might not be looking good for that. And that really is unfortunate for not just for the Marine Bird Cooperative, but also for Waterbirds and other groups as well that are trying to have conferences right now. Can things change? Yeah, they're changing all the time, but that would be a risk. So, but I'm still not ready yet to say no, that's not an option. And I'm still looking into whether or not there's any, ways that we can figure that out. Any other questions or comments about any of the stuff that I presented? Don't be shy. There's only 72 of you on. All right. I think what we'll do now is good discussion. I think what we're going to do now is move on, because we are pretty pretty close. We're within 5 minutes. We're going to move on to have Ruth Betcher and Sarah Schweitzer come on and talk about the North American Waterbird Conservation Plan revision. And we heard from Sarah and Ruth actually last year, but there's been a lot of really, I think, pretty exciting developments since then. It's really starting to come along with their leadership, and so we're gonna give Sarah and Ruth a little bit of time, and then yeah, are you? I see Ruth. Is Sarah gonna come on too, Ruth?
Yeah, I'm right
Yeah.
here, kind of being.
Okay,
silly.
I've got to change my highlights here because I'm still showing myself and just Ruth, but okay, cool.
Okay.
If you guys go ahead and share your screen when you are ready.
Sarah, do you want me to share or do you want to share? You got it. Okay.
I've got it. Can y'all see that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Looks great.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you, Caleb, and thanks for allowing us some time on the agenda to talk about the North American Waterbird Conservation Plan. As Caleb mentioned, we gave a little overview to you all. I think it was December 2024. So some of y'all have seen this before, either during that presentation or a different one, but just briefly, we're going to give y'all a background about the plan. So what it is, why we're talking about this plan and working on it, and how we're approaching some of the proposed updates that we feel the plan needs. And also, Ruth is going to go into some details about some of our progress and the timeline that we're following. So, so the 2002 plan was called version 1 because who put this together is a large number of people, but primarily Koechlin, Steinkamp, and Parsons are the top authors. They really wanted this just to be version 1. They knew they needed more information from Central and South American countries and the Caribbean, as well as some information on rails that they were not able to include in this first version. But as you all know, this version was not updated. So right now we're still working on the 2002 plan. And in 2006, there were some reports completed by Central and South American countries. So we do have some 2006 data that had been improved upon, but still that's getting quite old now. So why should we update the plan? Well, there's lots of reasons that we've highlighted here. First, we want to be able to leverage funding for full annual cycle waterbird conservation throughout the Americas and Caribbean. And you all may be familiar with several other organizations that are working on conservation and investment strategies for full annual cycle conservation. And we feel like having this plan in place would really help us do more work for waterbirds across the range. But secondly, we also want to identify focal species that require immediate conservation attention due to new and emerging threats, or species that can serve as umbrella species benefiting multiple waterbird species throughout the Americas and Caribbean. So we realize we can't work on all species all the time. So we want to use this opportunity to identify focal species. We also want to prioritize, develop, implement, and evaluate conservation actions and areas to benefit these species at multiple scales. And last, we want this new plan to be the primary guidance document for Waterbird Conservation Council, for states' wildlife action plans, joint ventures, and other state, provincial, federal, and non-governmental entities that are involved with waterbird conservation. Many of us in state agencies just finished our 10-year major revision to our wildlife action plans. In the process of doing that, it was really evident when we needed a guideline or guidance for waterbirds, we were still depending on 2002 version. So it's really clear we needed to update this plan.
So the purpose is
So what have we been doing recently to update the plan? What actions have we been taking? So first, we did host a couple workshops in 2025. We took the opportunity to work with the Waterbird Society in 2025 and the Waterbird Society and Pacific Seabird Group meeting in Costa Rica to join together biologists from Central and South American countries so that we could discuss the need to update the plan and work on some action items. We also had another meeting in Traverse City, Michigan with the Waterbird Society, which was held in November 2025. And in that one, we intended to reach North American partners, so Canadian and US partners. And so we had those great working groups, and some of the action items and discussion that came out of those working group meetings included a list here. First and foremost, it was determined that we really needed an inventory of existing breeding and wintering waterbird data, primarily from Central and South America. And we have started some of that progress, identifying partners who can pull together data from those regions so we understand what is the status, the population status and distribution of waterbird species in those areas. We'll also need to do that for North American areas as well. We did develop a process for identifying Latin American working groups. So the people who were present at the workshop determined if they wanted to be in a working group. We did not, we say partial progress here because we haven't identified leads of working groups, so we still need to work on that. We want to identify a method for sharing publications, reports, meeting minutes, and other things. So we did set up a SharePoint site, and we've given access to that SharePoint site by all the people in the workshops. And so that was one location where we could share all this information. And so that's, we say partial progress because we haven't fully engaged all the partners yet, and we need to check back and make sure that SharePoint site is easily accessible and they can get to all the material there. We also need to obtain information on existing regulations and legislation. That was one thing that came out of the meeting in Costa Rica, that there are some regulations and legislation that are barriers. Either they're weak or they're not fully implemented. So we felt that needed to be addressed. And there was one volunteer from that group who wanted to pull it together for Central American countries, but so far we've not made much progress on that effort. The next action was to draft an AFWA, so Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, resolution to garner support for drafting and implementing the new plan, establishing the Waterbird Conservation Council, and hiring a national waterbird coordinator. So we did complete that draft resolution. We presented it in the Partners in Flight Shorebird Waterbird Working Group of the Bird Conservation Committee, but it didn't make it out of the Bird Conservation Committee. There were concerns about the support that could be given by Fish and Wildlife Service at the time. So we'll keep working on that. And in fact, tomorrow I'm leaving for the NABC meetings, and I'll talk further with Fish and Wildlife Service about how they might be able to support a coordinator in one way or another. But then last, that leads us to this possible funding source to support the National Waterbird Coordinator, because that seemed like a big challenge and also a huge need to get somebody who can oversee the preparation and implementation of the plan. And so we are making lots of progress on finding support for this National Waterbird Coordinator. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Ruth. And Ruth, you can just tell me when you want me to forward the slides.
Thank you, Sarah. Perfect. Okay. And I'm sorry, folks, I'm gonna keep my camera off just because my internet's a little bit unstable. So anyway, I don't want anything to go wrong. Maybe I'll turn it on when we do questions and stuff. But anyway, so as Sarah said, my part of this talk is going to focus on an effort to get the National Flyway Council to provide support for a National Waterbird Coordinator. And the good news is there's actually precedent for this. The National Flyway Council currently provides a portion of funds for the North American Bird Conservation Initiative, or NABC coordinator. a position that was designed to advance the goals of active bird conservation initiatives across all 4 flyways. So what we propose to do is follow a similar funding template for the National Waterbird Coordinator position, whereby all 50 member states of the National Flyway Council jointly fund this term position for a period of 4 years. And the supervisory responsibilities would be shared among all 4 flyway non-game technical sections, along with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service representative. And the plan is to have the National Flyway Council funds go to an NGO willing to administer the position and to have the successful candidate work from a home office. If you can click or go to the next. And in the meantime, and throughout the term position, if needed, we'll continue to search for more permanent funding and support from federal agencies and NGOs in order to maintain this position over the long term. Next slide. Okay, so as Sarah said, we have made some progress along these lines. So last fall, all 4 flyway non-game technical sections approved the idea of developing a funding proposal. And since then, a draft proposal was developed by a cross-flyway team and distributed to all 4 non-game tech sections for review at the 2026 winter meetings. And so far, we've received really helpful comments from the Atlantic and Mississippi flyways, and comments are still pending from the other 2 flyways whose non-game tech sections are meeting later this month. So following the winter meetings, all edits and comments will be merged into one updated proposal, and this version will be submitted to each Flyway Council at the September 2026 meetings. And if all 4 councils approve the proposal, it will go before the National Flyway Council for a final approval at its annual meeting in March 2027. Next slide. And here are just a few key details about the position. Its overarching goals are to oversee and coordinate the development of the updated plan, which will extend equal representation to Caribbean, North, Central, and South American countries. The position will reestablish the Waterbird Conservation Council, a long-term governance structure that will assist with and guide the development and implementation of the updated plan, and deliver a complete first draft of the updated plan. And with regard to approach, we propose 7 objectives for this position, and each objective has its own set of tasks. And I'll go over the objectives in the next slide so you can get a better sense of the scope and intent of the position. And the cost of the position is estimated to be around $121,000 per year. And this would include salary and benefits, travel, office equipment, supplies, and software and cell phone subscriptions. Next slide. So as promised, here are a list of the position's proposed objectives to give you again an overall perspective of the job responsibilities. So the successful candidate will conduct an inventory and assessment of existing Waterbird data from the Americas and the Caribbean countries. The person will recruit subject matter experts, partners, and stakeholders willing to commit to this effort and become a member of one or more of the working groups. The person will develop an organizational framework composed of working groups with appointed leads and assigned objectives and tasks. And this framework will form the new Waterbird Conservation Council. And we envision the appointed working group leads will serve as the first set of members for the Waterbird Conservation Council, or on the council. The National Waterbird Coordinator will meet regularly with the Waterbird Conservation Council to discuss progress, challenges, and next steps, and to compile information gathered from the working groups. The coordinator will review data and written drafts to measure progress and maintain momentum toward completing a draft of the updated plan. And the coordinator will develop an outline, structure, and approach for preparing a draft of the plan. And lastly, this individual will coordinate and assist with the preparation of a draft plan. So we're all keeping our fingers crossed that this position will get funded. It's going to be a very busy position, let's put it that way. Next slide. Okay, so that about covers my part of it. But before I turn it back over to Sarah, I do want to announce that we will be hosting another Waterbird Conservation Plan workshop at the upcoming Waterbird Society meeting in Cape May, as we've already been told about. And we haven't developed a specific objectives or an agenda yet, but we will likely be taking a deeper dive into more focused topics, ones that will provide the National Waterbird Coordinator, provided the position gets funded, with a real solid base to work from. So that's the hope. And with that, I'll turn it back to Sarah for just open up to questions and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot of information, but we hope that y'all have some questions for us.
I think there's another slide, Sarah.
Yeah, there's
Just,
one more. These are questions for them.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's
That's
right.
true.
So, of course, you all represent a great number of different organizations. And so we're wanting to get some input and participation in these working groups. And we want to know if there's interest from any NGOs to help administer the position or contribute to it. We'd like some feedback. We feel like this position and updating the plan would benefit all of us in different ways. So it's going to be really helpful to get input from everybody from different organizations.
That's a great overview, and I really am amazed at all the progress that you've made since the last meeting, the last Marine Bird Cooperative meeting when you were here. I have a question, and I think it's probably worth mentioning. Where in the Waterbirds plan is it's been a long time now, and there's probably a lot of people that are not familiar with that original plan that are on the call. I wanted to just ask, what is the scope, geographic scope? We actually know that, but what is the taxonomic scope? It includes marine birds, as I understand it, but is that, how will that be incorporated? And then the other question is, what specific input or help would you be looking for from the Marine Bird Cooperative?
Yeah, so in our proposal to the flyways, we enlist much more detail than we could give here. We're happy to share that proposal with you all. But yeah, waterbirds include, of course, seabirds, herons, egrets, ibis, storks, rails, terns, skimmers, cormorants. So it's a big diversity of species, but all very highly dependent on water resources and fisheries in many cases. So the input would be participation on some of these working groups or workshops. I know Louise put some information in the chat about Birds Caribbean Waterbird Census Program. That's going to be super helpful for updating data for that region. One thing we want to do, of course, is have continue with this coordinator regional meetings so that the needs of these different regions are provided by the biologists in that region. And so that would be one task for the coordinator, is to meet closely with different regional biologists.
So Sarah, just to clarify too, as far as the taxa, so it would be any species that are breeding in those locations, and I mean, would that include things like gannets, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So I think that was the scope before as well, which is great.
Right. Yeah. I think, the scope was really large previously in the 2002 plan, but it was not able to include rails. And so, of course, since 2002, tons and tons of work has been going on with rails. And I think we could more easily incorporate all that new information that we have on that group of species.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I would just like to add to that, during the development of the updated plan, it may change in sort of the format or, one idea was to maybe, and Sarah mentioned this earlier, selecting focal species that serve as sort of overarching species under which others can fall and really develop, pretty tight and conservation actions that would benefit the focal species as well as the other species that are like under that umbrella too. So we don't know yet what it's going to look like, and one thing we will do is, as much as possible, take all of the information from the 2002 plan that still is relevant and, included in the updated plan. So we don't want to, it's not going to be like starting from scratch, I guess. So
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah,
Caleb?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. We have a question from Holly.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Holly.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah and Ruth. I was just texting with Ian, I think, who was just saying he's really excited that you were able to run with this. I know he was involved in some of the early discussions, but it was a big commitment. And so thanks. I wanted to just ask a question about your question to us with the NGOs, the proportion of the council. And I apologize if I missed this. I know you said that the expected salary and benefits of the position was 121 total and for 4 years. So can you just give us a sense of the general scope of what you're referring to in terms of the proportion of the council costs?
The council costs? I'm not sure.
Well, in the question you had on the last slide, you said you asked, is there interest from NGOs to administer the position and or support a percentage of the cost of the council, of the National Waterbird Council? Do you have a better kind of a sense of what you're asking for there?
Is the coordinator. NWC was national coordinator.
Okay.
Yeah. So we developed this off of that NAPC coordinator model, and one reason we focused on that is because the National Flyway Council had agreed to provide funds for that position, and because we're going to the National Flyway Council for this request, we wanted to follow a model that they had already used. And so within the NABC coordinator position, the percent of the funding that the state agencies provide through the National Flyway Council is relatively like maybe 40% of the cost. And it covers things like travel and supplies and things like that. It doesn't go towards salary in that case. So that position is primarily supported by federal agencies for salary. So it's Fish and Wildlife Service, USGS, BLM, U.S. Forest Service, primarily federal agencies. And then the NGOs also provide up to like 15% of the budget. So that's kind of how that NABC position is supported. And we'll use that model, but one thing we're running into right now, which I think was already mentioned in this meeting, the Migratory Bird Management Program in Fish and Wildlife Service is not receiving a lot of funding right now, and especially not an increase in funding. So when we've gone to that program to request support, we've been denied support, so to speak. And so we're trying to attack this from a different angle and getting states to kick in. So any further contribution monetarily from NGOs is going to be super helpful, whatever percent they can give. And if it benefits the NGO, it'd be really great to have that financial support. But one model that we're mimicking is what we have in the Atlantic Flyway, where Wildlife Management Institute is the administrating NGO for our conservation delivery specialist position. It's also a term position, time limited. And so what we would ask in this situation is for an NGO to do that same administrative support for the position. And so using that same kind of model, hopefully that explains a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So what, I have another question, and then if others have other questions, raise your hand or put them in the chat. My question is, so is for like the proposal that you have with the councils, does it help to have like letters of support or recommendation from anybody, or does that matter at all? I'm just wondering if that really, I know that the councils often will provide letters of support and recommendation to others, but does it go the other way? And if so, is that something that the Marine Bird Cooperative could protect? We now have the ability to do things like write letters like that. So I just am wondering, or NGOs or whatever would be helpful at this point.
That's
I
a
think
great
it'd
idea.
it'd be really helpful. According to our timeline, we won't take this to the National Flyway Council until March 2027. So that gives plenty of time to put together ideas on how updating this plan and forming that Waterbird Conservation Council will be beneficial to all of us who work on waterbirds. So I definitely think that would be helpful to have a letter of support, and actually, also explain how that would be beneficial to the AMBC and others.
That's great.
Because now it's like me and Ruth.
Right. No, I mean, I think that would be great. I also I doubt that this is necessarily possible, but I think it would be worth talking to our leadership to see if we're able to you always are asking us for things, like sending things to us through the council, and it feels like that's the direction. I don't know if that we're able to provide letters of support for things like that, but anyway, it's worth asking about anyway.
Well, yeah.
Well, and also I was
Go
just
ahead,
going to say, if we do get some, or if you draft a letter on behalf of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, it would be good for you to explain
what's going on,
why we have to go to states.
Exactly, and I think
story.
And I think that that wouldn't be a big jump, because I know that at least the Atlantic Flyway Council has written letters to the to Congress people saying the migratory bird program has been so defunded that they can't meet their obligations anymore to the councils. So that sort of goes hand in hand, I think. And this is another example of that, honestly.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out, because I didn't say at the beginning, the Waterbird Initiative is one of 4 major initiatives that are supported by NABC. And so it started really with the waterfowl, the North American Waterfowl Management Plan that was completed in the late 1980s. And that was followed shortly by a land bird conservation plan with Partners in Flight, and then the U.S. Shorebird Conservation Plan and now Council, and then also the Waterbird Conservation Initiative. So there are 4 initiatives. And right now, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Migratory Bird Management Program supports only one of those, and that's the Waterfowl Management Plan. So the 3 non-game bird plans or initiatives are not being supported by Fish and Wildlife Service right now. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry on behalf.
Well, yeah. So tomorrow I'm going to the NABC meetings in DC, tomorrow and Thursday. And so that'll give me a chance to talk with some of the people at that meeting. And one of the agenda items is discussion of these bird initiatives and the vision for the future of these initiatives. So hopefully that'll be revealing on how we're going to move forward. Yeah.
Great. We have a few more minutes for questions, comments, ideas. You can put things in the chat or, okay, oh, that's someone's coming in. Put things in the chat, or there's a few actually things in the chat here. But if others have any questions, we'll give it another 30 seconds,
Yeah.
and then I think we'll switch off. There's a really amazing opportunity here, I think. And again, kudos to you guys for thinking outside of the box and figuring out other ways to make things happen when it's been frustrating, I know, trying to get this going with the service.
Yeah, Caleb, I would just like to put in another plug for the Waterbird Conservation Plan workshop that we're going to be having at the upcoming Waterbird meeting in Cape May. Yeah, so if those of you who are planning to attend the Waterbird Society meeting, we would love to have you join our workshop if possible. Because what we're trying to do through these workshops, even though it's kind of the Sarah and Ruth show right now, but anyway, is to keep momentum going on this. And so that if we are able to hire, the coordinator, that person will really be able to hit the ground running more, so to speak. So, and, we're going to start working on sort of an agenda. And like I said, figure out ways that we can suck up as much information from you guys as possible at the workshop. So
Yeah.
please, if you can make it, we'd love to have you.
And I also will say that, if you guys have any particular needs, including letter of support or just a request for people to review something, the Marine Bird Cooperative is definitely, the listserv is something that you can use, or reaching out to particular members is great. Like, please do that. I think this is something that's important to us.
Mm-hmm.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Well, I
thank
think
you.
if there are no more, it looks you got a couple of comments in the chat, and thank you guys for your time, and good luck, and keep in touch about this.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. So now I think the next thing on the agenda is to talk a little bit about this Seabird bycatch reduction workshop that took place February 11th and 12th. And I am going to share my screen again and give a little bit a very brief update on that. Hopefully, okay. PowerPoint is opening, so very slowly. So thank you for your patience here. Okay, cool. So I'm going to share. It's finally up, and now I'm going to share my screen. Okay. This should work. Let me know if you guys are unable to see. Can everybody see the screen? I know it's not in presenter mode yet, but I'm going there.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So thank you guys again for being on and hearing a little bit about this this recent workshop that was put on. It was co-hosted by the Trilateral Committee on Wildlife's Bycatch Working Group, and again, this Trilateral Committee is for folks that don't know, is headed by leads of the different wildlife agencies in Canada, the US, and Mexico. And there's a number of different working groups and teams. So this is one team that includes members co-chairs from Mexico, the US, and Canada. And then also the Marine Bird Cooperative, I was involved in this. And it was facilitated by a professional facilitator that was great, Lynn Carbone and Associates, that really kept us on track. And one of the reasons that we were able to do that, actually the reason, is that there's a project that some of you have probably heard about. It was funded through the Deepwater Horizon Open Ocean Trustees restoration to actually restore the injuries in the Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010. And we have a couple of active bycatch reduction projects going on, one up in Atlantic Canada and one in Cape Cod, where they're actually testing bycatch reduction techniques. And those are active projects. And some of there's a small amount of funding that went to be able to provide to get professional facilitation. And the reason that this is really helpful for the Deepwater Horizon projects is that it really provides us with some ideas for how to move forward in later phases of the project. So again, that's a really important thing where we had a bunch of kind of overlapping needs, and we were able to kind of take advantage of that here. I probably don't need to tell this group, but commercial fisheries bycatch is the second highest source of mortality for seabirds. A third of species are affected around the world, and millions of birds are killed annually. Seabird populations have declined by 70% since 1950. And again, there are vast differences from fishery to fishery, and how much of a big deal this is for seabirds. But it is important to think about this as a whole and think about the cumulative impacts on seabird populations. So that is why we had this bycatch workshop, and we had a number of objectives. And the first objective was just, this is a pretty unusual opportunity. We don't have a lot of these opportunities to get together and share information. So we wanted to pull together information on the current state of knowledge for seabird interactions and bycatch reduction techniques for 3 different commercial fisheries gear types: gillnet, longline, and trawl, that are known to affect seabirds, particularly in North America, but also in other parts of the world. We also had the intent to share information from published sources and stakeholders in a best management practices inventory. And that was actually developed and shared, a draft of that, for all participants of this meeting. And it is being revised currently, but it will be out for more public use. It'll be available on the Marine Bird Cooperative website. So that'll be a really great resource, and it sort of represents the state of current information on best practices that have been established by groups like ACAP, the Association for the Conservation for Albatross and Petrels. Sorry. And then input, we wanted to obtain input on making mitigation techniques beneficial and adoptable. There are a lot of times with workshops, just the technical part of bycatch reduction is considered. Well, is this, maybe auditory deterrent or visual deterrent, going to actually do the job that we think it is? That's only one part of a much bigger equation, which is, once you have something that works, you have to figure out how to make sure that they are adopted on a wider scale. And so that was another thing that we really wanted to cover during this workshop. We also wanted to explore potential partnerships for this and promote priority seabird reduction techniques and activities in the future. So this was an opportunity to get people together and talking about this again. And, these kind of workshops really don't happen very often. So this was a great opportunity. And then we wanted to really identify knowledge gaps and inform fundable projects potentially in the future. And again, I told you that the Deepwater Horizon project is also looking to some of the results of this to help us out in making decisions. So I wanted to just highlight that this was the planning team was made up of a number of people from the Fish and Wildlife Service, both active and retired staff, Canadian Wildlife Service, the Comisión Nacional para el Conocimiento y Uso de la Biodiversidad, which is also known as CONAM, and also Lee Benica and Lori Rounds, who are either current or retired employees of NOAA. So it was a real collaborative effort to pull this together. And then, of course, the really expert facilitators at Lynn Carbone and Associates. So we had a number of sessions. In day one, we talked about this workshop survey that was given out to all potential participants, and we had 83 people respond, which is pretty amazing response rate. They provided input, and the results of that survey were provided to everyone and will also be made public. The summary of that of the results from that, and that really helped us kind of organize how we wanted this workshop to go. Another thing that we did in day one was to really just go through what is known about the impacts and reduction practices currently for longline trawl and gillnet. These were presented by the planning team, even though comparatively there were a number of experts on the call that knew way more about this than we did, but we did our best to summarize what was currently known. And then we had a panel discussion, which was an opportunity for people to provide more input. And so that was really helpful. And so that first day was a lot of presenting information, but the second day was more about hearing from people that were participating. And we started off with this really great group it was a panel presentation and discussion that was the Coonamessett Farm Foundation and Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance, who are partners on one of the Deepwater Horizon projects that we're working on. They really gave a great summary on how their work has been conducted and how they were able to get fishermen to actually be interested in participating in such a project. And really, I think one of the highlights of this whole workshop was a session with the actual participants of that project who are commercial fishermen. And what we heard, I think, more than anything, is that people wanted more of that kind of interaction with fishermen. So that was really a fantastic part of this workshop. We also had some implementation breakout sessions by gear type where people could actually share what they think would work for different gear. And then just a summary of who was there. We had 130 participants over the course of the meeting, which was 2 half days from at least 7 countries, most from the Canada, US, and Mexico, but also from as far away as South Africa and Australia. We had participants working in almost all North American waters, and there's a number of stakeholders from fishing management organizations to provincial agencies, and I did mention that there were fishermen. We invited a lot of fishermen. We got about 13 or so that participated ultimately, so that was good. But of course, always looking for more interactions with fishermen that are interested in this subject. And we got a lot of feedback from participants already that said that they thought that this was a productive workshop. So I'm going to go through the highlights and outcomes real quickly here because I know we're kind of at time. We talked about, most importantly, collaboration and trust building with commercial fishermen being critical. And most importantly, the fishermen are really what they know the conditions on the ground. So they need to be engaged in the design, testing, and implementation of reduction practices. This is a real human component, and a need for social science was highlighted to develop more productive relationships with fishing partners through groups like the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance. We have to also do a better job of collecting and communicating data-driven results, including on what the impact would be on the fishermen's bottom line, which should be nothing, because we also realize that actionable approaches often will require fisher incentives, but also understanding the implications of what could happen if there was no action, which could include future regulation. But everybody agreed that is kind of the worst case scenario, is having regulation, because then there's a lot less control over what kinds of activities are implemented. And less buy-in and volunteer efforts from the fishermen themselves. We produced a toolbox of options because no one size fits all. Every fishery is different, and these all have to be measurable, feasible, and simple, and get fishermen and buy-in. That's really important. And some of that buy-in happens through outreach and promotion and relationship building. Coordination among collective expertise and resources is really important. This workshop was representative of a huge number of people that had a lot of specific information about fisheries and seabirds. But, you know, without a workshop like this to share that information, there's no real way for us to merge ideas and come up with solutions that work for every stakeholder. So this is a good opportunity to do that, and we need to continue facilitating these in the future. And despite all this information gathering that was done for the workshop, you know, knowledge gaps always exist. And so more pilot testing is needed for some fisheries. We have to better understand the mechanisms as to why some of these things are working, and scale up effective partnerships across industry. That's still really important. So this is my last slide. So in the short term, what we're going to do is produce a bycatch proceedings report. That will be available either middle of the month or later in March and served on the Marine Bird Cooperative website and in other sites. There will be a best management practices summary. That draft is already available to people that were participating in the workshop, but we'll have a final revised version. We're accepting comments on that into late March. There will be our partners at Coonamessett Farm Foundation and the Cape Cod Commercial Fisheries Alliance have been preparing some articles for fishing trade and public news outlets, which is really great. They've been fantastic partners on this project. Purse seine workshop is likely. Purse seine is a fishing type that there was really some concern about in Mexico. And so it was outside of the scope of this meeting, but the Trilateral Bycatch Working Group is going to put together a workshop on purse seine in the upcoming months. And in the longer term, we want to highlight and initiate some of these promising actions from the workshop. There will be a section in the report. We've already heard from some NGOs that they might have an interest in helping to figure out how some of this could be funded in certain areas. And we also have heard from from different folks that a living directory of resources and a wish list of project ideas would be super helpful, particularly with the Trilateral Bycatch Working Group being able to implement and bring partners together for that. And then this social science dimension is something that we really need to explore a little bit more, but we have that plan of that being a really important part of these bycatch projects is outreach and partnership building. And then facilitating the sharing of information, particularly integration with other groups that are already doing this, like sea turtles and marine mammals, but also like thinking about more workshops and working groups into the future to kind of keep up this momentum. So, if you have any interest in this, I know we probably don't have a lot of time for questions. We're at that break. We're actually into our break a little bit. But please contact me, or you can write something in the chat right now and I will respond to it. But most importantly, if you want a copy of the best practices or the proceedings report, or particularly if you want to engage in this topic, maybe even through a bycatch working group and the Marine Bird Cooperative, please reach out to me. This is a really timely topic right now on our coast, and it's been many years since we've been able to do the kind of work here that we are doing now on this coast. So I'm going to stop sharing, but thank you. And yeah, I don't think I'm going to take time for questions just because of eating into the break, but we are going to take a break now and come back at 10:45. Sorry, not 10:45, 10:30, not 10:45. We're going to take a 10-minute break and come back at 10:30 to talk about the World Seabird Union update. Sorry to eat in 5 minutes, but I do appreciate your attention, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. 10:30, bio break, come back.